It's quite a lot of information. Quite a lot of information that will be presented, and we hope that going forward we could have shorter sessions where we stagger this information for the same audiences that we have it at in batches. But for today, since this is our first meeting and our first webinar out there for information sharing, we will give as much information as possible, starting from the historical perspective of the organization called UPOV and some of the experiences in countries that have that have joined UPOV, but also start with a brief introduction to farmers' rights and farmer-led seed systems, because these are the farmers' rights and farmer-led seed systems are going to be impacted by the introduction of this law. So as background, we may all be aware that the Seed Control and Certification Institute under the Ministry of Agriculture is in the process of repealing and replacing the Plant Breeders' Rights Act. And in it is the reason being advanced, which is in the preamble of the draft bill, is that it is being revised in order to allow Zambia to join an organization called the International Union for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants, which is a European Union, which is more or less like a club of plant breeders in Europe. So I will now, I would like, first of all, before we start, recognize the presence of the Royal Highnesses that are present here. I think I've taken note of
I've seen the power has come.
Nyampande.
Call it now the
Mali, could you mute people as they come in, please? Yeah, so I would like to recognize the presence of our chiefs, the Royal Highnesses that are present here. I think in particular, I've seen the presence of Royal Highness Nyampande. I don't know about others. And sorry if I may not call you by name because I can't really see you. But we appreciate your presence. And this is actually meant for you particularly because we would like you as custodians of our traditions, custodians of our seeds in Zambia, to understand exactly the implications of this new law on what we hold dear as a country and on the entire seed system of this country. At this point, I call upon Mr. Koma to talk briefly about farmer seed systems and farmers' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutinta, and good afternoon, all participants. And I would like to recognize the presence of some of our traditional leaders. Before can I request all of us to mute our mics, please? Please keep our mics muted unless we are talking. Thank you very much. Before I introduce our guest speaker, who's Francois Mellenbeek, let me just say a little bit the connections between today's presentation by Francois and the issues that are impacted by the things that Francois will be talking about. Now, it so happens that our agricultural system in this country depends a lot on the small-scale farmers. These are the people that produce the bulk of the food that we eat, including in the urban areas. To be able to produce that food, they practice a farming system which they have practiced since time immemorial, which is the fact that in their communities, nobody is completely independent of other members of the community. So they share seed. Panji, please mute your mic. So they do their agriculture based on a system of interdependent on each other in the community. Much of that practice includes sharing their seeds, sometimes selling to each other, sometimes exchanging, and a lot of this seed is seed that individual households save when they plant from season to season. They save a little bit for planting in the next season. And during those planting in the following season, seed will move from one household to another household. So this is how our farming in this part of the world, and generally speaking, in most African countries and beyond, has been. This is a system that is referred to as farmer-managed seed system or farmer-led seed system, because it's a recognized system and it has served societies quite well. In recognition of the value of this system, to ensure that the biodiversity of these crops is continuing because seed is being shared, the term of farmers' rights was coined at the time that negotiations were taking place globally, which led to a treaty called International Plant Genetic Resources Treaty, where farmers were, this system that I've just described was recognized, and the farmers were recognized. Chimtero, please, mic off. Chimtero 8, your mic off, please.
Sorry, hold on. Charles has been muted. Sorry, Charles.
Someone is muting.
We're trying to mute the other people. Thanks, Charles. Please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you. So essentially, farmers have the right to continue practicing that kind of farming. Now, the reason we are here is to listen to at least one of the seeds laws. In this country, we have two principal laws that address our seeds. We have the Plant Variety and Seeds Act, and then we have a Plant Breeders' Rights Act. The Seeds Act regulates propagation, distribution, and recognition of seed. In other words, Linda, please, your mic. And now, yes, so the Seeds Act regulates what can be sold as seed, what can be used as seed, what can be exchanged as seed. And there is a criteria that is the law provides in terms of determining which one is seed and which one is not seed. So as this law is being revised now, our immediate interest has been that we take this opportunity to ensure that our own local seed, the farmer's seed, is recognized in the law, because the current law does not recognize it. Okay, so we would like that our seeds also get recognized, so that if any of us wants to produce any amounts of this seed, they should not be impeded by the law. If they want to trade it, if they want to distribute it, if they want to share it, if they want whatever I want to do, they should not be impeded. The second law, which is the Plant Breeders' Rights, is about ownership and protection of the varieties, meaning that any variety has to have an owner, and it has to have some protection. This, of course, was intended to motivate those that are in the business of breeding, so that they can continue this aspect of plant breeding. Unfortunately, the changes that are being espoused in these plant breeders' rights are removing the little space that has been there in the current rights, which allows farmers to be able to practice what I described before, to replant, to share, to do whatever they want to do with seed. So, and this is why we are here, to understand how changes in the Plant Breeders' Rights Act as being espoused now can actually lead to that problem. And so let me take this opportunity now to invite our guest speaker, Francois Mellenberg. Francois is from an organization which is a global network of civil society. This network works to establish plant breeding, but not for the benefit of individuals, but for the benefit of society, breeding frameworks that will also take into account farmers' rights, as I have explained, and also ensure that the diversity that is out there is protected. So, Francois, you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles, and hello to everybody, also to the distinguished chiefs and all the participants. I was just asked 1 day ago for this presentation, but I'm very happy that I'm able to make it. So I planned the presentation for about 45 minutes, but I will interrupt from time to time also to give you the possibility to ask questions. I'm already sure that there will be also questions at the end, and I could also give you my contact at the end, so also the discussion could continue afterwards if needed. I will now share my screen and start my PowerPoint presentation. All right. Could somebody confirm that you see this well?
Yes, we see
We are
it.
able to
Thanks,
see it.
Francois.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
we can see. It's clear. We can see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. And before you start, please, those that are joining in, could you please post your email addresses and your names in the chat box, if you're able to, please. Thank you.
Okay. So the main question certainly today for the Zambian society, for the Zambian government, what would be the most appropriate plant variety protection right for Zambia? And I try a little bit in my presentation to answer these questions, also having a look at other experiences. But first of all, I will give you a little bit of background about plant variety protection in general, and then the emergence of this organization called UPOV. Then we will speak how UPOV could have an impact on farmers' rights. Then I like to have a closer look into the proposal for a revised Plant Variety Protection Act for Zambia, so the draft which is now in consultation. And then I will have a look on the contradictions of UPOV and also of this draft Zambian law with other international agreements. And at the end, but I think a very important part, we'll have a discussion about the impact of UPOV. What is the impact on human rights, but also what is the impact on the seed sector? So to start in a very general way, sorry, I had to switch a little bit the screen because I don't see my presentation well. Just a second. So what is intellectual property? So first of all, this plant variety protection we speak about is an intellectual property, like a patent, a copyright, and so on. So this is a monopoly conferred by the state for a certain duration. So in plant variety, it could be 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, or even 30 years to protect new creations. And also looking to all different IP laws existing, these laws are never absolute. They always have exceptions and limitations to these rights, taking into account, I would say, the public interest. But these are still monopolies and often lead also to a market concentration when they are used exploitatively by industry for maximizing the profits. And what we see now is a trend for a globalization and a harmonization of intellectual property rights really all over the world. And this is certainly related to a push by commercial interests, by pharmaceutical companies, chemical industry, seed companies, and so on. Now I can't switch my... So now, focusing on intellectual property on plants. The first Plant Patent Act was drafted in the US and adopted, but this was very limited, only on asexually propagated plants. And only then in the 50s and in the 60s, few European countries have developed what we call now PVP laws, so plant variety protection laws. And then in 1961, really based on an initiative by the seed industry and by very few European countries, the UPOV Convention was adopted. So this UPOV Convention, UPOV is an acronym, but coming from the French, it means Union pour la protection des obtentions végétales, so the Union for the protection of new varieties of plants. And this has then been, in a way, funded in 1968, but only came into force in 1968, when it has been ratified by the United Kingdom, by the Netherlands, and Germany. Then this UPOV was then revised in 1972, 1978, 1991. And the 91 revision entered into force in 1998. Important to see that with each of these revisions, breeders' rights have continued to be strengthened, but farmers' rights and the space to operate has been reduced. And I think it's also crucial to see that the membership of UPOV and the countries who have negotiated all these revised acts of UPOV has been very small. When UPOV has been renegotiated in 1991, this has only been done by 20 member countries. So most of them from Europe, but also from the Japan was on the table, the US, Australia, New Zealand, and as the only country from the developing world, South Africa, at this time, as you know, the apartheid regime. I think it's also to see the contrast to all other treaties we know related to plant genetic resources. So, for example, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture from the FAO. All these other conventions have been negotiated and developed with developing countries playing a key role. So this is a real big difference to UPOV, which is really, I would say, a European-based agreement. And when this has been negotiated, it's clear that the agricultural practices and the system prevailing in developing countries have never been taken into account. the UPOV system and UPOV 91 has been created by developed countries for developed countries. And it was never meant to be the PVP law, for example, for Zambia. Because if this would have been the goal, then it's clear that people who know more about this agricultural system would have to be on the negotiation table. Then a turning point in UPOV's membership was the adoption of the TRIPS agreement in 1994. And let's have a short look on this. So as you know, in 94, the WTO, and with the WTO, also the so-called TRIPS agreement, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, has been adopted. It was the first multilateral agreement prescribing minimum standards on IP. And in this TRIPS agreement, there is this Article 27.3b, which says members shall provide for the protection of plant varieties, either by patents or by an effective sui generis system or by any combination thereof. So why this is here? This is here because a lot of countries, also for example, all countries in Europe, do not have patents on plant varieties. They use plant variety protection system. And therefore, this has been in a way drafted in this way. A lot of countries see that a patent is not a good system to protect plant varieties, but it's rather a sui generis system, which is a unique system. So it's not the patent system, it's a system created to protect plant varieties. Important to see again that this Article 27.3b does not mention or require joining UPOV. This does not exist in the TRIPS agreement, this word UPOV. And the governments have the full freedom to design any plant variety protection system that suit their individual needs, conditions, and agricultural priorities. And in addition, least developed countries have a transition period, which is still ongoing and could be also renewed in the future. So least developed countries do not need to have any PVP system, even if they are WTO members, but all other countries need to have a kind of protection for plant varieties. Now, different countries have implemented this TRIPS requirement to have plant variety protection system in place in different ways. Some countries, and especially the ones from Latin America, said after 94, okay, we rush in a way and ratify the UPOV Act of 1978, which gives us much more freedom, for example, to implement farmers' rights than the newly negotiated UPOV Act of 91. It was possible to join UPOV 78 until 98 when UPOV 91 came into force. But a lot of other countries said, no, this is not the way we like to go. And they have introduced their very own, so the very sui generis plant variety protection law. For example, as Zambia did in 2007, but also Zimbabwe, India, Ethiopia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and many others, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and a lot of countries have said we will not join UPOV. We develop our own law to better meet our needs and international obligations. And so I would say that the UPOV map looks at this today. You see here in red are all the countries which are member to the Act of UPOV 91, which is the strongest plant variety protection law in place. You see, it's still really, I would say, dominated by countries from the global north, Europe, US, Canada, Russia, Australia, and so on, and very few developing countries. We have, for example, here Peru, which has been forced to join because of free trade agreements with the US. The same is true for Morocco, a free trade agreement with the European Union. Also Vietnam, an agreement with Switzerland and other EFTA states. We also see here OAPI countries, so that Western African countries. So these countries are, as individual country, not member of UPOF. But OAPI, so the Organization on Intellectual Property from West Africa, has joined as a regional organization. And I will speak about this later. So interesting to see here also on this graph is the green countries. So as I said, although UPOF 91 has been negotiated, as it says, in 91 and adopted and came into force in 98, all these countries decided for the last 30 years to not join UPOF 91. And they said, no, we like to stay with UPOF 78 because this gives us much more flexibility to implement farmers' rights. Interesting also the case of New Zealand, which is not allowed to join UPOF 91 because they have an agreement with their indigenous peoples, the Maori, which prohibits them to join UPOF 91. Also South Africa, which has been on the negotiation table for UPOF 91, has not joined, but still stays with UPOF 78. So what is this difference between UPOF 78 and UPOF 91? First of all, countries member to the Act of 78 are free to say which genera could be protected and which could not be protected. Today, in the UPOF Act 91, the government needs to protect all possible genera and species. A big difference is also the duration that there is, which is now much longer. Now, for example, also a new term, the essentially derived varieties, has been introduced. These essentially derived varieties say that the so-called breeders' exemption, where breeders are allowed to freely use a protected variety for further breeding, is not allowed for essentially derived varieties. So if I produce an essentially derived variety, I have to go back to the initial breeder to ask for permission. For example, these EDVs have been implemented in the Zambian Act, in the Plant Breeders' Rights Act of 2007. So this means Zambia has already taken into account several parts of UPOF 91, but not all. Because the biggest, certainly, and the most important difference is the so-called farmers' exception, and I will speak about this just now. So in UPOF 78, the scope of breeders' right was really, in a way, the production for the purpose of commercial marketing. This means UPOF 78 protected one breeder against another breeder. So when I brought, for example, my new variety on the market, another breeder was not allowed to do the same the next day. But this had not an impact on the rights of farmers. And this changed in UPOF 91, where you see the scope of UPOF 91 is much broader now. It's not only about the production for purposes of commercial marketing, it includes now also all production and all reproduction and multiplication. And even the stocking for any of this purpose is under the scope of the breeders' rights. So this means as a farmer, you are allowed to do nothing. But there is now the so-called farmer's privilege in Article 15.2 of the UPOF Act, but which is very, very limited. This is the text in the UPOF Convention. And this shows, for example, you are only allowed to, in a way, multiplicate varieties on your farm where you use the product of the harvest for the further planting. This means, for example, for fruits, I don't use the product of the harvest to propagate and multiplicate, as you know. The same is true for a lot of vegetables. If I like to multiplicate strawberries, I do not use the strawberry. So it's different with, for example, rice or wheat, where I use the product of the harvest. This means this right to multiplicate and to use for next season the protected variety is very limited in UPOV 91. Also, because it has always to respect the legitimate interest of the breeder, and it's only allowed with reasonable limits. This means even where I propagate and multiply a crop where it is allowed, even in this case, I need to pay, for example, to the breeder a certain amount. For example, when I'm a farmer bigger than a certain size, in Germany, I receive a letter from the breeders every year asking me to say which crops I have multiplicated on my fields, and they send me then an invoice for the crops I multiplicated in my fields. And as you see also in this wording, it's only allowed to do this propagation for planting on my own holding. So this means any exchange and sale is prohibited in principle. So just to summarize, the farmer's rights to save, use, exchange, and sale is totally prohibited regarding exchange and sale in UPOV, and extremely restricted when we speak about the multiplication in my own fields. So how now Zambia tries to introduce these rules of UPOV 91 when they revise the new law. So on the left side, you see the wording of the current Plant Variety Protection Act. So the act which is in force today. And on the right side, you see this new draft, which is proposed by the Zambian government and is under consultation these days. As you see before, for example, in this Article 8.2, the farmer had a right to save, exchange, or use part of the seed from the first crop of a plant which a farmer has grown for sowing in the farmer's farm to produce a second or subsequent crops. So saving, using, exchanging was explicitly allowed. This part has been deleted. It does not exist anymore in this new draft. And also, for example, in Article 1.8c, there was also the possibility for, although a restricted possibility to sell. And I saw a very interesting part, also Article 8G, there was in a way a possibility, and I would say even a right to obtain these plant varieties which have been protected from a gene bank of a plant genetic resource center. Also this has been deleted. As you see on the right, today there is a possibility maybe for a limited list where a historical common of practice of seed saving has been in place to allow farmers to multiplicate seeds. This list will be specified by the minister, but for example, fruits and other vegetables are not on this list. This is already decided in this law. And again, totally in line with the UPOV text. The breeders' rights shall not extend to a farmer who, with reasonable, sorry, this is very wet. I have to close my phone. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Don't have this. So I have to come back. I'm sorry. I have to come back again. I'm sorry. But we will. Okay. Okay, so today it should be allowed in the future, but on a very limited way. So going further, this means, have you seen that I'm switching impact on the rights? Still okay? Could you confirm?
Yes, we have it.
Yeah. So this means that the right of Zambian farmers today, which has been in a way an already restricted right to sell seeds, is abolished. The existing right to exchange seeds of protected varieties is also abolished. And the right to multiply and use propagated seeds of a protected variety is restricted to a list of defined crops, not including fruits, and needs always to be within reasonable limits and subject to the safeguard of the legitimate interest of the holder of the breeder's rights, meaning there could be also payments, even if you grow this protected variety in your own field. And also the possibility to obtain, with the conditions of utilization, the protected variety from a gene bank is abolished. But interestingly, when you read this draft law, there are some footnotes introduced by the UPOV Secretariat. And in this case, they even ask for a different wording to be totally in line with the UPOV Convention. And then another very important change to the current law is on the restrictions to plant breeders' rights. So, for example, on the possibility for the government to issue a compulsory license. As you see today, again, on the left side, the government has a lot of possibilities to restrict the plant breeders' rights to protect the public interest. If you see again the new definition on the right side, this is very limited. So this means, for example, the biological diversity or the requirements of the farming community could not be in future, if the new law is adopted, a reason to restrict breeders' rights. And again, in the current law, there is the possibility, for example, when the plant variety offered is only imported and not produced in Zambia, there has also been a possibility to give a compulsory license to also produce this variety in Zambia itself. And for example, if the plant variety is not ready, is not solved to farmers in the country, there has also been a possibility to issue a compulsory license. So this means that the new proposal drastically limits the ability of the Zambian government to restrict plant variety rights and to grant compulsory license in order to protect the public interest. But in this case too, the UPOV Secretariat would still like to see a weaker wording, as you see in the footnote in the draft law. I like to stop here for a moment and maybe to also allow some questions, or maybe the discussion could be afterwards, but if there are some questions for understanding, I would be happy to answer them now before I go further and speak about the impact on the seed systems of this new right, of this new Plant Breeders' Rights Act.
Thank you, Francois. Please raise your hand. We are quite many, so if you have a question, and like Francois has said, mainly for understanding purposes, please raise your hand.
Mutinta Conrad has his hand up.
Please go ahead, Conrad.
Yeah, so may I take you, could you put back slide number 13?
Could it be seen?
No, number 13, 1-3. Yeah, just there. So maybe I would just want to understand the draft bill 2024 really removes it's interesting to see what they are removing, and I would just like to understand what is the objective of, for example, number C, stopping me, a farmer, from producing a variety of a crop within my farm and reproducing it within my farm. Not is sending outside my farm, not giving to anyone outside my farm. Within my farm. What's the objective of stopping me from doing that?
So in my view, all these questions have not been raised when this new draft law has been developed. Because as it seems to me, it seems that the only goal to revise the law was to be in line with UPOV 91, in a way to be allowed to join the UPOV Convention. So in my view, when you revise a law, there should always be the questions: what has been the problems in the current law? What has been the good things? What are the needs of our agricultural system? What needs to be enforced, and so on and so on, and to do maybe in the best case some ex-ante impact assessments. What will happen when we revise the law? All this, in my knowledge, has not been done, because the only goal was to be in line with UPOV. And if you like to be in line with UPOV, you are in a way not allowed to ask these questions, because the goal is to copy paste what is in this framework agreement of UPOV 91 and to
So
be
maybe,
in line with it.
I would like to know what is the benefit of joining UPOV?
Yeah, so maybe this comes then also in the second part, but so there are a lot of governments tell us that the benefit of joining UPOV is certainly a stronger plant breeders' rights, so giving more rights to plant breeders and less rights to farmers, but this is not said. And they pretend by giving more rights to breeders, the innovation in the country will be supported. There will be more import of new seed varieties, and therefore, in a way, a push for the agricultural development. But as I will show in the second part of my presentation, I think this is not based on factual evidence. But the understanding behind is really, in a way, strong breeders' rights equal a better development of the agricultural system. And in my view, this is just wrong.
So this is being pushed by the let's say the CIDCOs and the likes, right?
Certainly, for seed companies, especially international seed companies who like to protect the new varieties all over the world, a globalized system where every country has the same rules is great, because they don't have a lot of bureaucracy if they like to protect their variety in different countries, because all have the same rules. But this is certainly, in a way, the benefit for the seed companies if you have a harmonized system globally. The problem here is, as I said at the beginning, that this, in a way, harmonized system was only negotiated by very few countries, not taking into account the needs and demands of a lot of other countries.
Okay, thank you. For now, I think
Yeah, I will come back on several questions then. Seems there is another question, maybe, or if not, I go on and we will have time at the end.
Just reading a question from the comments: who will benefit more from these changes, farmers or plant breeders?
I think this is an easy answer. As you see, especially what is shown now on the screen, the farmers' rights have been cut down in this new proposal. So there is certainly no benefit for farmers, as a lot of things they have done today will not be allowed again in the future. And even if you go further in the new draft law, you will see that there are risks to be in prison and so on if you're in contradiction with this law. So certainly it's a benefit. I would not even say for all breeders, especially for international seed companies who like to have a harmonized system globally and to have a strong breeders' rights where farmers are not allowed to exchange, sell, or even multiplicate varieties. So it's a right to reinforce the monopoly breeders have, because so far farmers still could work with these varieties. This should not be possible in the future. If not, I go on, and so we have also enough time at the end. Is this okay?
Yes, Francois.
Okay, I just like now to mirror, in a way, this plant variety protection law with other international obligations related to seeds. And so I think I go again to the other mode. Sorry. Okay, so this is about the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources. It's an agreement under the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN. Today we have 148 members. And important, this has a total other look about seeds and plant genetic resources. And here, the rights recognized in this treaty to save, use, exchange, and sell farm-saved seeds are recognized. And they say these are fundamental to the realization of farmers' rights. And then there is also a specific article about farmers' rights, where again, this enormous contribution that local and indigenous communities and farmers have made and will continue to make for the conservation and development of plant genetic resources has been here recognized. And they speak about also that the treaty should not limit any rights that farmers have to save, use, exchange, and sell farm-saved seeds. Even a stronger wording on farmers' rights we find in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas, adopted by the UN in 2018. Here again, Article 19 calls explicitly for the right to save, use, exchange, and sell farm-saved seeds or propagating materials. Peasants have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their own seeds and traditional knowledge, and states shall take appropriate measures to support peasant seed systems and promote the use of peasant seed systems and agrobiodiversity. And states shall ensure that seed policies, plant variety protection, and other IP laws respect and take into account these rights. So we see this is a full contradiction to what I have shown a few minutes before, where this right to exchange and sell is abolished totally, and even the right to save and use is heavily restricted. Interesting here, 3 years ago, the Supreme Court of Honduras declared the new plant variety protection law, which was based on UPOV 91, unconstitutional because there has been this contradiction to this UNDROP and especially to Article 19 and 20. So important to see that all these other treaties, and I could also mention Convention on Biological Diversity, in a way really try to support the farmer seed system because this farmer seed system is so central to the global nutrition. This has also been mentioned in a lot of studies. I just mentioned two here. One is from Wageningen, from a Dutch university, where they clearly say that the farmer seed system and crop development form by far the most important source of seed in most farming systems of the world. And another study which says that farmer seed networks make a vital contribution to agriculture because they're also producing new agrobiodiversity. So what is now the impact if we are not, first of all, introducing UNDROP and the FAO Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, but if we focus our seed laws on UPOV and if we restrict these farmers' rights? So first of all, I would just shortly mention also the impact of UPOV on state sovereignty. We just published a study last year which has analyzed this UPOV accession process. And I thought the results are very interesting because UPOV is unique. It does not exist in any other international agreement. So if you like to ratify the act, your legislation is analyzed word by word. And if it does not conform to the UPOV Act, an amendment of the law is required. So this means that, in a way, this UPOV Secretariat has more power of definition in the development of a PVP law than any elected national parliament. And we compared this accession procedure with all other agreements, so WIPO, WTO, CBD, FAO Treaty, and others. But such a requirement, such an extremely rigid and inflexible accession process does not exist in any other international agreement. So if I join CBD, the treaty, or WIPO agreements, WIPO is the World Intellectual Property Organization, my law is never, in a way, checked word by word, and I have to change my law if they don't like it. So this means if I like to join UPOV, I do not have the opportunity to develop a PVP law adapted to my agricultural system, my level of development, and my needs. Just one example. Malaysia also asked to be a member of UPOV, and they sent in their law to double check. And the Secretariat says, okay, yes, the law is nearly totally in line with UPOV 91, but you have to delete following part of your law if you like to join UPOV. For example, Malaysia has also today still the breeders' rights, which says it's allowed any exchange of reasonable amounts of propagating materials among small farmers. And the small farmer here is a farmer having less than 0.2 hectares. So it's a really small farm. And UPOV said, no, if you like to join our organization, you need to delete this from your law. And Malaysia had also another clause saying the sale of farm-safe seeds in situations where a small farmer cannot make use of farm-safe seeds on his own holding due to a natural disaster or emergency should be allowed. Again, UPOV said, if you like to join, you need to delete this clause in your law. If not, you will never be a UPOV member. So what is the impact of these strong laws? First, I think it's very important also to see a study which has been done by the United Nations Development Program in 2008. And the UNDP clearly says that UPOV tends to favor commercial breeders, and they promote genetic uniformity in crop varieties. And this could have drastic effects on biodiversity, because only so-called uniform varieties could be allowed for protection. They have no mechanism or safeguards against biopiracy. And especially they criticize that UPOV is a one-size-fits-all approach. But this is not the right thing to do today, because maybe Zambia does not need the same law like the Netherlands, because there is a different agricultural system. And UNDP clearly criticized this one-size-fits-all approach, which is not the right thing to do. Then there has been a study, for example, by the World Bank, where they say again, farmer seed system are the main source of seeds, and intellectual property rights may reduce the effectiveness of these systems by limiting saving, exchanging, and selling of farmer-produced seed of protected varieties. Maybe just to understand better this interaction between the so-called formal and the informal or the farmer-managed seed system, I like to show this graph. The outer circle is the formal seed sector. So you see the excess genetic resources, they breed, they release, they multiplicate, and they market, right? It turns around, because again, from the seeds, they use maybe the best elite lines to breed new varieties. But important to see here, also the formal sector is using varieties and plant genetic resources from the farmer managed seed system, which is the inner circle. So most of the plant varieties which are held in the gene banks today are coming from the farmer managed seed system, which has created this big diversity, which is also used by the formal seed sector today when they are looking for new resistances or for new traits. But you see here again also the inner circle, which is the farmer managed seed system. And it's clear the farmer managed seed system often use maybe local varieties, traditional varieties to selection, production, and so on. But the farmer managed seed system also like to have access to formal seeds, for example, produced by a national research center. And this is this pointed arrow coming from marketing to diffusion. The problem is now, today, with the strong Plant Breeders' Rights Act, this access from the farmer managed seed system to the formal seed system, where they like to introduce some new varieties in the farmer managed seed system, is not possible, because a farmer is not interested in a seed when he is not allowed to save, to exchange, or to sell it. On the other hand, this access from the formal seed system, so if they go to a gene bank and are asking for a traditional variety, this today is governed by the international treaty, and they don't pay, they don't ask, they have just a free access with the so-called SMTA. Several NGOs did a so-called human rights impact assessment of UPOV some years ago, and the main findings here has been that the informal seed sector in a way guarantees access to an affordable seed for small-scale resource for farmers and protect them also from uncertainties of the formal seed supply. For example, if uncertainty in price, availability, and quantity. So it was important, and we have made these studies in Kenya, Peru, and in the Philippines, that the farmers are able to have also the seeds on their farm, also to be sown in the next season. And if you also only could have the seeds coming from a formal seed supply store, which is maybe 100 kilometers away, this is not a safe access to seeds. But also we have seen that the sale of seeds are an important source of income for many farmers. And this is also important for the diffusion of seeds, because a lot of seeds are accessed in local markets from farmers to farmers. And when this is not allowed anymore, the whole diffusion is restricted. Then another study has been done by the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany, and they have very clear recommendations. They say if a developing country has not joined UPOV today, they should consider opting for an alternative sui generis system that allows for more flexibility to meet the obligations of different treaties, meaning also allowing them to fully implement, for example, the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources. This is exactly what Zambia has done with the Act of 2007. And this is also the recommendation. But it seems today that there are certain people who are not like to follow this recommendation and to restrict the flexibility. And especially there is also importance to double check or to triple check what is the impact on human rights, especially the human right to food. Now, when we listen to governments who are trying to introduce UPOV 91, they often tell us this is an important move to support and to strengthen our formal seed sector. And here, these are two researchers who have done an extensive study on the impact and the strength of intellectual property and their impact on the development of the agricultural system. And they did not find any significant correlation between a strong IP protection and agricultural value added in these developing countries. More important, they have seen that a lot of countries who have changed the plant variety protection law has been done, have done so because they have been pressured by foreign countries or by the seed industry. And they had not a look on the domestic needs. And they risk now to implement an IPR regime that is not appropriate. And also, and I think this is also important to see, it could even have a negative impact on innovation. So a strong Plant Breeders' Rights Act could reduce innovation because it's evident that any innovation in plant breeding, also the innovation done by farmers, is based on a free access to plant genetic resources, on a free access to other varieties. And when this free access is restricted, you have a negative effect on innovation. Then another study from the Netherlands, and this paper has analyzed the effects of the introduction of plant breeders' rights in 80 importing countries on the value of exports of seeds and planting material from 10 exporting countries. And they did not find any evidence that the adoption of UPOV-approved system positively influenced the seed imports. So this is a very important counter-argument for what is told us by many governments who like to introduce UPOV 91. It's just not true that this will have a positive impact on seed imports. And this could also be shown with the experience of Western Africa. As I said at the beginning, the OAPIC countries, so 17 states of Western Africa, have introduced as a region UPOV 91 in 2006. But only 7 of the 17 countries have used the system. So 10 countries, also in these 10 years, had not had any application from a new seed variety. The private sector has not used the system for the first 10 years. And the system has not delivered any significant increase in plant breeding, nor led to the development of the seed industry. But maybe most important, after 18 years, so today, in all the 17 countries together, only 7 varieties are protected. And if I compare this to the Zambia, where today, with the current law, you have 177 protected varieties, this is an incredible difference. So I think we could see that this UPOV 91 has totally failed in Western Africa. There has been no push, no new development of seed varieties, and it's even less innovative as the current law in place in Zambia. So it's really to be questioned why you should follow these Western African states when you have in place a functioning system. And I come to my last slides. And here it's a very recent communication from the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to food. And this was a communication sent to Indonesia because Indonesia is these days negotiating a free trade agreement with the European Union. And Michael Factory wrote that this informal seed system used by farmers, marked by practices such as saving, exchanging, and selling farm-saved seeds, serves as a fundamental pillar, sustaining both the agricultural sector and the livelihoods of small-scale farmers. The UPOV 91 system, often criticized for its inflexible one-size-fits-all approach and its limited leeway or flexibility to design a PVP regime that reflects the conditions and realities of various agricultural systems. And it poses a significant obstacle for Indonesia, impacting its population of smallholder farmers. And maybe even more interesting is the reply by the government of Indonesia sent to the Special Rapporteur. Indonesia says that they made clear that it considers the preservation of an appropriate balance between the rights and obligations of farmers and breeders with utmost care and attention, and the country reiterated its position not to accede to UPOV, to ensure policy space to protect smallholder farmers, seed system, and plant variety diversity. And to end, my last slide is a quote from the UN Secretary General from a report from 2015. And he mentioned this additional challenge that has advanced to the forefront is the pressures exerted on small-scale farming stemming from the provisions of the 91 Act of UPOV. Restrictions on seed management systems can lead to a loss of biodiversity, in turn harm the livelihoods of small-scale farmers, as well as weaken the genetic base on which we all depend for our future supply of food. As smallholders rely predominantly on the informal seed system, the restriction imposed by the Act on the use of farm-safe seeds, then I can't read my own slides because there is something here, and the prohibitions I'd say cause considerable concern. Now I can't switch. This is the end of my presentation. If you like to have more information about the impact of strong plant variety protection laws, please visit our website on aprobest.org. Here we have a lot what is here on research analysis, publications, a lot of studies about the negative impact of UPOV. And also in our newsletter, we always write about new developments. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm very happy to respond to any questions which might arise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. Yeah, thank you. So we will take a few questions. And unfortunately, we are running late in terms of time. So a few questions, please, very pressing. I'll start with one that was posted in the comments on whether I think the participant was asking whether they saw properly when they saw that government may not be able to stop or to take out a variety that is underperforming under this law.
I did not understand.
I think the question refers to if the law, if there's a variety that has been released and protected and it's underperforming on the market, does it mean that under this law, government will have no?
No, I think it's clear under this Plant Breeders' Rights Act. If it's protected, it will be protected for this next 25 years. Maybe this is rather, this question is also related to the Seeds Act, where often, I don't know exactly how it's the case in Zambia, but at least for agricultural crops, you often need to prove also that the yields of your new variety, and you are only allowed to register the new variety if it's in line with the certain amount of yield. But regarding to the Plant Breeders' Rights Act, you are not allowed, there is no possibility to stop the protection and to stop the plant breeders' rights on the variety when the variety is not performing. This is not foreseen in such an act.
Thank you. Omali, any hands up?
So, Mchincha, we have a hand from National Union for Smallholder Farmers of Zambia, Mr. Loloji.
Please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think mine is a concern because I think we are observing a trend whereby there is this kind of discrimination when it comes, to consultations, stakeholder consultations, based on what certain groups stand for. I'm seeing a situation whereby they will try to discriminate certain groups or invite them at the end of the process when they know very well that these people might not have time to forward their concerns about a certain issue. you know, this is very, very sad, because to me now, I'm seeing a situation whereby now we are advancing certain laws to benefit a certain group, or certain groups, which I think is not very, very good for this country. I really feel very, very disappointed about this law. And you know, if a union which represents farmers is not being consulted, what about, you know, the small scale farmers themselves? I think this is very, very sad, and we need to stop this trend as a country. Thank you so much.
Maybe just to underline what has been said, the right to participate in decision-making is also part of the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources. This is a part of farmers' rights to participate in these decision-makings. And Zambia has ratified the international treaty and should certainly implement. So give all the farmers the rights to participate. So I think this should be certainly be done. And if it's not done, it's in contradiction with international obligations.
Any other hand, Omali?
Yeah, so we have a hand from GRC. So GRC will start, then I think followed by Wesley. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sorry I joined late. I didn't have an opportunity to see the other slides, but I would appreciate if the other slides they are shared so that we can read it through. However, coming on the table, I just want to bring to the House that if you are aware that we have got an act that talks about traditional knowledge, where a term innovation has been coined, where there is a saying that if somebody accesses genetic diversity from the farmers, there should be benefit sharing. While the plant breeders' rights talking about a person who has bred or developed, discovered, and developed or bred, the Zambian Act, which is currently in place and the one that is being proposed, it has allowed for farmers to do for on-farm use and non-commercial purpose. And non-commercial purpose, if we exchanging of the germplasm between farmers has got no commercial value, I think it's catered for. In my own view, I'm thinking that people should read the draft bill, look at the consent, compare with the traditional knowledge and folklore, which is in place in Zambia, which caters for local seeds, land races, whatever they may be called in that category, and see if there is conflict and bring that to their attention so that those issues can be ironed out. And one of the items that the plant breeders' rights, which is in this current act, which is also in the old act, is on emergency issues. It allows government, when there is an issue of emergency, to step in. And it may be, if there is a good variety which is protected but is not allowing for people to commercialize or to use it, government has the powers to that. Let's look at all this and see how they will infringe in what is called the farmers' activities. But remember, breeders look for diversity, and the farmers, traditional local land races, are the custodians of diversity, and always breeders are going to the custodians, to the farmers, the communities. I think it's high time that those communities using the traditional knowledge that are protected, so that a breeder, when he goes there, the community should have its share of whatever is going to happen. Now, I want also to inform you that the plant variety and seed system is totally different from the plant breeders. That's why people sometimes there is a mix. A variety that is not, which is underperforming, it has got nothing to do with the plant breeders. It has got to do with the Plant Variety and Seeds Act, which is commercialization. And any variety that's not performing, it will sell it outside its market. So those things are really taken care of. The information that this act will stop the farmers to use their local land races and so on, I think it is something that has been done out of a misunderstanding. However, I want also to bring to your attention that the Act just puts the main pieces. The regulations spells out how these things can be done. And this is where all of us will miss it. And the current government has made it a possibility that before you bring a new draft act, you must consult. Even when the regulations are there going to come, people will be consulted. To the extent that you, the people, if, for example, illegal seed is a problem, you, the people, should say, a person who's doing illegal seed, the punishment to have put is too small. Increase it. It will come from you. The reason why government has put this is because it saw that some other ministries and so on were just putting prices and you people, you are complaining. So it has to undergo that. And the plant breeders' rights is undergoing the same process. The first step has been done. By virtue of you reacting to all this, you are the first people. Researchers have been invited, everybody has been contacted. We will go to provinces, to provincial headquarters, and all the people will be called. Please, let's give the people the draft, let them comment on each section, and let them say if this is going to infringe on this, let them come up with a possible way. And remember, for your own information, Zambia is exporting mulberries. It's because of the plant breeders' rights, which is in force. If you relate the export of seed and the protection of mulberries, there is no correlation. So you need to look at what Zambia has and what it can use to develop further. For example, mulberries. We cannot do seed production and export seed of mulberries, but we can export their fruits. Right now, we have farmers who want to grow this one, avocado. And everybody knows that a variety called the Hass has got market outside there. If you go on the market and ask everyone, you're going to find any other tree as Hass without verification. If we do not have quality issues, farmers will plant a variety, they think it's Hass. When it grows after 25 years, they'll find they are just duped. Plant breeders' rights allows where you are not strong, you bring in. So it's up to the people of Zambia what they want, whether this act, we want agricultural development to go ahead where we are weak, or we stay where we are. When it comes to maize, we cannot talk about maize. There we are okay. When we talk to these other local interests and so on, plant breeders' rights has been in Zambia, many varieties have been protected because of the nature of our own agricultural system. No one has ever protected soybeans. No one has ever protected wheat. The reason is because we are catered for. But when it comes to horticultural crops and others, this is where we are having issues when you want to export and within. This is what I would like to bring into the fore. However, I can make many comments when I hear a very nice presentation, a very nice, very good case studies. And I was given an opportunity to go to India, where both the farmers varieties exist and plant breeders' rights exist and the local seed systems exist. I was shocked to discover that the farmers' variety, what the government did, it took them, characterized them, and they were protected, which can also be done in Zambia. If today we think Gangata, who have commercial value because of the need to eat a colored maize, which has got a heavy nutritional value, I think it's very easy for the government or whoever to come in, characterize it and protect it so that in the future, when any breeder wants to use under that innovation, we can patent it under traditional knowledge or protect it. He should
Dr.
be able.
Chanda, could you just wind up, please? We are remaining with 5 minutes.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Ketan. Sorry, I was trying to get hold of you so that we get a gist of that.
Yes.
I'm very sorry, but anyway, the rest we can interact on the side tables and discuss more and more. Thank you very much, Madam, for tolerating my.
Thank you for that submission, Dr. Chanda. For
behavior.
those of
Please
you who
forgive me.
don't, yes, he didn't introduce himself properly. Dr. Chanda is actually from SCCI, and they are the people that have drafted the bill. I think if you saw in my comments when somebody asked about traditional varieties, I said this one is silent about traditional varieties, what we call the land races or indigenous seeds, as they are called in most cases. So, and I think that the presenter has spoken about protected rather than land races. So, yeah, would you like to, I think we can give, pardon?
No, to quickly respond to that, the plant breeders' right is silent on land races because land races are taken care of traditional knowledge. Well, that's why they fall and folklore. And we have the Act 10 of 2016. And
Thank
you
you.
see, acts don't fight each other. They strengthen one another. Thank you.
They are supposed to actually, yes. Yeah,
Correct.
so
And the lawyers
I think
are
we'll give
sure. No, sorry.
okay, we'll
let
give
me
a
not-
chance to His Royal Highness Chief Mumbi. I saw a hand before we go to the next hand.
I appreciate it, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes. My issue really is the consultation issue, especially concerning us, their Royal Highnesses. You know, most of the peasant farmers are in our areas, and we are the chiefs who are in the forefront to protect them and to see that also they are part of the system that is coming up into place. And it's not that the peasant farmers will just be restricted maybe to growing maize. Definitely, they need to venture out into other crops that are commercial, that can are commercially viable, that can also give them the commercial value. We can talk of maybe blueberries and other crops. But now, when some of these laws come into place and their Royal Highnesses as stakeholders are not included in the consultation system, yet we are the ones who have so much land that we are protecting, that we have for most of our peasant farmers. So if we are not consulted and some of these laws just come up, really that disadvantages us, the Royal Highness, with all our subjects, meaning that we are cut off. It's like we are not existing. It's like we are not part of the system. When such issues come up, and there are some acts that need to involve especially the farmer system, knowing that also their Royal Highness, we have a lot of farmers that look up to us, and we are the ones who can also tell them to venture into some of these other commercial crops. But now if there are those restrictions and we are not consulted and we don't know anything about that, really, it becomes a disadvantage on our part. Please, when such issues come, we have we as stakeholders, we should be consulted. The House of Chiefs is there. None of these issues have come up, even to the Royal Highness in the House of Chiefs. I'm a member of the House of Chiefs. And I've just stumbled across this meeting through His Royal Highness Chief Nyampande, who brought it to us, their Royal Highnesses. And to me, it's actually an eye-opener to the future of farming in Zambia, to the future of really what we need to know. And if all that is hidden from us, we don't even know about that, it gets implemented, definitely, I don't know how best what we have, I mean, the best that we have for this country and the land that we are holding on behalf of the millions of Zambians who need also to venture into some of these commercial crop varieties. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness. Omali, what was the next hand?
So we have Esther Phiri.
Okay.
Esther?
Hello, sorry, actually, I'm Dr. Piri. I'm just using Esther's gadgets. I think, first of all, I must confess that, like the Royal Highness who just spoken, we just stumbled on this issue via one of the platforms we belong to. And I'd like to observe, first of all, that it is important, for example, to protect the right of our scientists who have chosen the route of plant breeding. That one is not in dispute. However, when you want to change laws or you want to come up with laws, you want to state what will this law try to cure. And again, I may be speaking out of context because I haven't seen the draft bill itself. I've read through the Act of 2007, and it would have been good, for example, the previous speaker, I think from government, Dr. Chanda or something, that he should have actually, for example, told us what the intention of this new bill is. What is it that is the weak now that they want to strengthen? We don't want a situation where some things are sneaked in our laws, and then we realize later on we have a problem. Let's say with a company that is a seed company says, "Hey, you're infringing on my right." For example, I would like to know whether what type of rights are given to the farmer. Where is the protection of the farmer? If, for example, I've been doing the local maize, Gankata, whatever, since 1996, and assuming that on my farm, I start observing certain traits on the seeds that I have. And for example, a protected breeder thinks that actually their traits are found in my seeds. What protection is there for me? Can I sue the company? Because I know that the company would actually easily sue me and say, "Hey, you've got traits which are not yours, which we developed under this intellectual property right." So like I said, haven't seen the bill itself. I tried Googling to download it. I can't find it. But I think the cardinal thing is to have a clear explanation as what this is going to cure. And I heard the previous speaker from government. I think he cited some seeds, some plants like soya beans and so forth. And I frequently go to Eastern Province. And from the recollection I got is that there was a disaster in Eastern Province with the seed, soybean seed, which was given to some farmers, I think many farmers. And I got my information that it was spread in all the districts of Eastern Province where farmers actually incurred huge losses. So in a case like that, how does this law protect those farmers, from actually, let's say, damage, loss and damage? I think laws which are developed behind, select groups, I think do not give us confidence as to whether they are going to protect the country. It is good to say, "Oh, we went to India, this is what we saw." Wait a minute, but actually we're talking about what we're experiencing here in Zambia. So on that, let me just pause so the others can actually comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are past our stoppage time, but I think that if there are any pertinent questions, we will take 2 more hands, after which we'll have Francois respond, and we have our closing remarks. But before we have the two hands, I also just want to echo what the previous speaker, Dr. Piri, is from saying. One of the things that we actually contending, and I'm happy that SCCI is here in our midst, is that during the first consultation, which was held in Lusaka, we were told that there is actually a research that informed these changes and the rationale behind the changes to the law. Because in the preamble, the only reason given for changing the law is so that we can join this European Union, nothing else. So if there is that information, I think it would be important that this information is shared to everybody so that everybody understands why these changes are necessary. That is just for FYI, Dr. Chanda. It's not something to respond to if you're still here. Yeah, so can you, two hands, Mali, do we have anyone with a raised hand?
Yeah, so we have His Royal Highness Nyampande.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I just wish to concur with the His Royal Highness Chief Mumbi and Dr. Piri. I would also like to thank Francois for a very easy to understand presentation. Hopefully we'll get part of that. I think mine is a concern, especially the gentleman that came from government. You can't come here and say you consulted, you went to the provinces, you came to Eastern Province. Who did you see? Because I don't know anything, and if it wasn't from Tinta and the good work that you're doing, we would have never known anything about this. Whether it's a good bill, whether it's whatever the changes are, we would have never known. And for me, it's saddening that I have to hear from Francois, as good as presentation is making, when such a presentation I should have heard from our own people, from the ministry. Whether it's a similar platform like this, where other Royal Highnesses and stakeholders would have participated, I'm just a little bit disappointed, that's it. That I have to hear from Francois, whatever country he's in, whereby my own local Zambian could not put together a meeting such as this. And he even had to come here, you know, basically as a guest and try and tell us about other acts, which he should have done way before. It's just very disappointing. And it's a little bit absurd that it feels like it's being snuck through, that it becomes difficult for us to see the good in it. I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Your Highness. Omali.
So we have Wesley.
Okay, that's the last hand. Wesley, make it short, please.
Then the last one is Zoe. I don't know whether you have some time to spare, Mtinte, but there's also Zoe. Maybe he or she will be the last one.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Wesley.
All right. No, thank you so much, Francois. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just adding to the concerns that have been raised, but also to note that the current legislative process, as provided for in the 2016 Constitution, does allow actually for our voices to be heard, to the extent that the president may not even assent to any bill that is not in public interest. So I think one of the things that we need to keep looking at is to get research that then informs that this bill is not in our interest. And if we can be able to prove that, I think it's very, very clear that as the bill comes at whatever stage, this consultation, or if we provide our consents, they'll still be taken in. That's all I wanted to say, that we are protected by our constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. Zoe, quick one.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My concern has already been mentioned, but I thought I mentioned it. It's on consultation. Really, where did the government staff go? Because we have spoken even to our chiefs. Fine, I'm speaking from the UK, but very much in touch with where I come from. We've spoken to our chiefs. We've tried to look around for the MP. We've talked to people in the government offices back home in the small district. There is no knowledge of this thing taking place. So to the level where we are, is there a way consultation can be published even on Radio Zambia, on different channels of media houses in the country? Is there a way it can be publicized that way, so that we don't really say people heard it and then we didn't hear, only to see different laws applying? We get arrested for growing the maize or the kind of indigenous crop we've always been eating from the time our parents ate this when they conceived us. We were born, we were eating this gankata maize or chipwaya or katande or whatever it's called. It's a food that we know we eat. Now we should be arrested for it. Can there be further publicity, please? And put a stop. We love our food. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, so before I hand over finally to Francois for the last comments, I would also want to say that the consultations that are taking place in the districts, I think have been, I think we would like to get the schedule from the SCCI. Maybe other people can participate through the districts. But I also want people to imagine this, that I'll give an example of soybeans. So if you have been recycling your soybean seed, it means that when this law is effected, you can't recycle it beyond a certain number of hectareage. If they say it is 2 hectares, then you can only plant 2 or 1 hectare. And then after that, you cannot, because the owner of that seed would want you not to save seed, even if you are able to recycle it. Seed that you grow on your own farm, by the way, you harvest, you keep some, you cannot grow up beyond a certain hectareage, because then you are infringing on the right of that plant breeder. And what this means basically is that you have to keep buying the seed, even when you're able to reuse what you have on your farm. And we know that there are farmers, small-scale farmers, that would be able to grow 3, 4, 5 hectares of a certain crop, but they cannot do that anymore under this law. It means that you'll be restricted, and if you are found, you can actually be subjected to prison or very big fines. That's what I think the bottom line is, some of those issues that Francois spoke about, and I'm just trying to simplify one of those issues as an example. So over to you, Francois. We are closing. You have 5 minutes.
Maybe I don't need 5 minutes, but first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak and share my thoughts. Maybe just one other thought on the consultation. So when I also analyzed this new draft and compare it to the old one, I think what should be done, I don't know, by the government or by somebody else, but I have never seen, in a way, a document where it points out the changes. Because you see, the new law for, I don't know, 90% is also the old law. And it's quite a hard work to find all the changes between the old law and the new law. And I think this needs to be done as a basis for consultation. You need to know what is changed and why it is changed. And so far, what I have received, I have not seen any such document where I see all the changes made. It's a work which still need to be done. And certainly, if now it is, for example, proposed that exchanges between farmers of protected seeds are prohibited or should be prohibited in the future, in my view, there is a need to ask, what is the impact of this? What happens to small farmers when they are not allowed to exchange? What does it mean for access to seeds for these farmers if they are not allowed to sell, and so on and so on? And I have never seen such an assessment about the impact of these new prohibitions. And maybe just on a general term, I think we need to be aware that, I would say, in the last century, a lot of laws, and UPOV is one of these laws, has been drafted to promote the formal seed sector because there was a belief that this is the only innovation sector. But times have changed. Now with the Convention on Biological Diversity, with the FAO Treaty, with this UNDROP resolution from the UN, I think it's clear that it is known that the farmer seed system is an innovation sector, is an innovation system. And also this innovation system needs, in a way, to be supported and protected. And what we see now with this old UPOV law is that we protect the old or the formal system, taking into account negative effects on the farmer seed system and their innovation. And this is wrong. And I think you see the treaty, UNDROP, CBD, this has all been negotiated after UPOV. So when UPOV 91 has been adopted, all these new developments have not been taken into account. And therefore, I think it would be really a wrong step if today, in 2024, Zambia tries to bring their own law in line with a UPOV Act which has been developed more than 30 years ago and which is not taking into account all these new developments protecting farmers' rights and agrobiodiversity. And SARB is free. They have my presentation. Please share it with everybody who likes to have it. And I also invite SARB, maybe if somebody is asking for to share my contacts. If there are many questions, also what I said today, maybe I could suggest that it's sent to SARB and then in a way collected and sent to me. So it's maybe easier to answer them, if this is okay. Again, thanks a lot for listening. So maybe Muteta, you need to say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you to the Royal Highnesses who were actually very instrumental in us holding this meeting.